Billy opened the door. A stranger stood there, drenched from the rain, his face shadowed under the dim porch light. He looked tired, no, exhausted. His clothes were soaked through, and his eyes carried something heavy, something unspoken. He wasn't someone I knew. At least I didn't think so. But there was something about him, something oddly familiar, that made it impossible to shut the door in his face. "Please," he said, his voice rough from the cold. "I need help." Everything in me screamed to be careful. You don't just let a stranger into your home, especially not in the middle of the night. But there was a tremble in his voice, a desperation I couldn't ignore. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside and let him in. As he walked past me, dripping water onto the floor, I couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this one simple decision, was about to change everything. At first, I thought it was just about giving him a place to dry off, maybe a warm drink before sending him on his way. But the longer he stayed, the more unsettling things became. He knew things about my house, little things no stranger should know, where the extra blankets were kept, how the back door sometimes got stuck, even the way my dog Max liked his ears scratched. It was as if he had been here before. I tried to convince myself that I was overthinking, that maybe he was just observant. But then he said something that made my blood run cold. "I've been here before," he murmured, almost to himself. "A long time ago." I froze. My mind raced, trying to place him. Had we met before? Was he someone from my past? But no, that didn't make sense. I would have remembered him, wouldn't I? The air in the room felt heavier now, charged with something I couldn't explain. I watched as he turned away, his gaze settling on a framed photo on the shelf. The moment he saw it, his entire expression changed, like he had just uncovered a secret he wasn't supposed to find. Then he looked back at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't name. And the next words out of his mouth sent a shiver down my spine. "You don't remember me, do you?" And just like that, everything I thought I knew about my life, my home, and my past started to unravel. This sets the stage for a suspenseful and mysterious story, keeping viewers hooked. Let me know if you want any tweaks. I stared at him, my mind scrambling for answers. His face was unfamiliar, but the certainty in his voice sent a wave of unease through me. I forced myself to stay calm. Maybe he was confused, or maybe this was some kind of mistake. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for the framed photo he had been staring at, lifting it carefully, almost reverently. It was an old picture, one I barely looked at anymore. It showed my family's old house, the one I grew up in, with my parents standing on the porch. I was just a kid back then, grinning at the camera, my dog at my side. There was nothing unusual about the photo. At least, that's what I had always thought. But the way he looked at it, like it meant something more, made my stomach tighten. "I was there," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "In that house." A chill ran down my spine. That wasn't possible. I would have remembered him. I had lived in that house my whole life until we moved years ago. I tried to brush off the sudden unease creeping into my thoughts. Maybe he had the wrong place. Maybe this was just some strange coincidence. "You must be mistaken," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's my childhood home. My parents lived there for years." He turned to me then, his expression unreadable. "I know." The air between us felt heavier now, thick with something I couldn't quite place. My mind raced through possibilities. Had he known my parents? Was he some long-lost family friend? But that didn't make sense. If he had been a part of my past, I would have recognized him. I watched him closely, trying to figure out if I should be afraid. He didn't seem dangerous, just unsettled, like he was searching for something, some missing piece, but that only made this stranger more mysterious. "How do you know my family?" I asked, my pulse quickening. For a moment he hesitated, as if weighing his next words carefully. Then he let out a slow breath. "Because I was supposed to be there." A knot tightened in my chest. The way he said it, it wasn't just about visiting. There was something deeper, something I wasn't seeing. I wanted to press him for more, to demand an explanation, but before I could, a gust of wind rattled the windows, making the lights flicker. The tension in the room seemed to grow, stretching between us like an invisible thread, pulling tighter and tighter. Then he looked me dead in the eyes, and what he said next made my blood turn cold. "They never told you the truth, did they?" I felt a sharp chill creep up my spine. The stranger's words hung in the air like an unfinished sentence, heavy and unsettling. I wanted to ask what he meant, but part of me wasn't sure I wanted the answer. My parents had always been open about our past. At least, that's what I believed. What truth could they have possibly kept from me? He set the photo back down with careful precision, his fingers lingering on the edge of the frame. His eyes flickered with something, pain, regret, maybe even anger. "I was supposed to grow up there," he said, his voice quieter now. "In that house, with your family." My pulse pounded in my ears. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. "That doesn't make any sense," I said, shaking my head. "I was an only child." The stranger let out a humorless chuckle, but there was no amusement in his face. "That's what they told you." I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Was he lying, mistaken, or worse, was there some dark part of my family's past that had been buried so deep even I didn't know about it? "Who are you?" I asked again, my voice more forceful this time. He hesitated, as if deciding how much to tell me. Then, after a long pause, he finally spoke. "My name is Ethan." His gaze locked onto mine. "And I think I'm your brother." The room tilted, my breath caught in my throat. Number, that wasn't possible. I had no brother. My parents would have told me, wouldn't they? But deep down in the part of me I didn't want to acknowledge, a terrible feeling started to take root. What if he was telling the truth? The silence between us stretched unbearably long. I could hear my own heartbeat, fast and unsteady, pounding in my ears. My mind screamed that this was impossible, that Ethan, if that was even his real name, was lying, mistaken, or worse, trying to manipulate me. But there was something in his eyes, something raw and certain, that made it impossible to dismiss him entirely. I took a shaky breath, my thoughts tangled in 1,000 directions. "That doesn't make sense," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "If you were my brother, I would have known. My parents would have told me." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Would they?" he asked, his tone sharp. "Or would they have done everything in their power to make sure you never found out?" I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was wrong, but a strange, gnawing doubt had already taken hold. I thought back to my childhood. Were there ever signs, gaps in memories, conversations that ended too quickly? My parents had always been loving, always protective, but now, looking at this stranger standing in my living room, I wasn't sure if that protection had been meant for me, or meant to keep something hidden. I stepped back, suddenly needing distance. If this is true, then prove it. Ethan studied me for a moment before reaching into his jacket pocket. My breath hitched as he pulled out an old, worn photograph. He handed it to me without a word. My fingers trembled as I turned it over. It was a picture of my parents, younger, smiling, and between them was a little boy. A boy I had never seen before, a boy who looked just like Ethan. Before I could react, Ethan spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "They erased me. I stared at the photograph, my hands gripping it so tightly that the edges curled. The boy in the picture, Ethan, was standing right between my parents, the same way I had in so many family photos. But I had never seen this picture before. Not once. It wasn't in any of our old albums. It wasn't in the boxes of memories my mum kept in the attic. It was like it had been completely wiped from existence. My chest tightened. "This doesn't prove anything," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. I wanted to believe my parents wouldn't have hidden something like this from me. I needed to believe that. Ethan let out a slow breath, his eyes dark with something unreadable. "I know this is hard to accept," he said, "but I'm not here to convince you. I'm here because I need answers too." Something about the way he said it sent a shiver through me. He wasn't just a stranger claiming to be my brother. He was searching for something he thought I could help him find. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan hesitated, glancing around the room like he wasn't sure if we were alone. Then he leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I don't remember everything," he admitted. "There are pieces missing, gaps in my memory. But I do remember this. I didn't leave on my own." A cold sensation crept up my spine. "What are you saying?" He looked at me, his expression grave. "I was taken." The word sent a jolt through me. Taken? My parents had always been cautious, always careful. They would have never let something like that happen. Would they? I shook my head. "That doesn't make sense. If something happened to you, why wouldn't they tell me? Why wouldn't they have searched for you?" Ethan clenched his jaw, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. "That's what I've been trying to figure out. Why did they let me disappear? Why did they erase me?" He exhaled sharply. "And why did they pretend I never existed?" My stomach twisted, but before I could say anything, a loud knock echoed through the house. We both froze. The knock came again, harder this time, a slow, deliberate sound that sent my pulse racing. Ethan's eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw real fear in them. "Did you tell anyone I was here?" he whispered. I shook my head. The knocking stopped. Silence pressed in around us. Then, just as I opened my mouth to say something, the front door handle began to turn. The door handle turned slowly, the metallic click echoing through the silent house. My breath caught in my throat. Ethan's body tensed beside me, his eyes locked on the door. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the movement stopped. The silence was worse. My pulse pounded in my ears as I stared, waiting, bracing for whatever was coming next. Then, footsteps, slow, deliberate, moving away. I exhaled shakily, but Ethan didn't relax. "They found me," he murmured. Before I could ask what he meant, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me toward the back of the house. His grip was firm, urgent. "We can't stay here," he whispered. "They don't want me to remember." My mind was spinning, but I followed, my heart racing. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a breath. "Who doesn't want you to remember?" Ethan didn't answer. He led me to the back door, pausing just long enough to check outside. The yard was empty, but the air felt charged, like something unseen was watching. "We need to go," he said, pulling me forward. We stepped outside, the cold night air wrapping around us. My mind still fought to make sense of everything. My lost brother, the erased past, and now, whoever had come looking for him. Then, just as we reached the edge of the yard, headlights flooded the darkness. A black car parked just beyond the fence. The engine idled, low and steady. Ethan froze. His grip on my wrist tightened. "Run." Before I could move, the car door opened. And then, my mother stepped out. The world tilted. I blinked, my breath catching. "Mom?" She didn't look surprised to see us. Her face was calm, almost unreadable. Then she looked at Ethan, her gaze steady. "You shouldn't have come back." Ethan's entire body stiffened. "You knew," he said, his voice trembling with something between rage and heartbreak. "You knew what happened to me." A shadow crossed her face, but she didn't deny it. "It was for your own good," she said softly, "for all of us." My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" My voice cracked. "Mom, what's going on?" She sighed, like she had been carrying a weight for far too long. "Ethan was never supposed to come back," she said, "because he was never supposed to exist." A chill ran through me. The ground beneath me felt unsteady. And in that moment I realized I didn't know my own family at all. The night felt colder now, the weight of my mother's words pressing down on me. Ethan was never supposed to exist. The sentence echoed in my mind, making my stomach twist. I looked at her, searching for something, remorse, regret, an explanation. But she just stood there, composed, as if this wasn't the most horrifying thing she had ever admitted. Ethan took a slow step forward, his voice shaking. "You knew I was out there. You let me disappear." My mother closed her eyes for a brief moment, then exhaled. "It wasn't my choice." The words sent another jolt through me. "Then whose choice was it?" I asked, my voice rising. "What does that even mean?" She looked at me then, and for the first time I saw something break in her expression. Guilt, pain, love. "It was complicated," she whispered. "You were too young to understand, and by the time you were old enough, we had already buried the past." I shook my head, frustration bubbling to the surface. "That's not an answer." Ethan clenched his fists. "Tell her the truth," he demanded. A long silence stretched between us. Then, finally, my mother spoke. "Ethan was taken from us," she admitted, her voice hollow. "Not by strangers, by family." The words hit me like a punch. "What?" "Your father's side," she continued, her voice unsteady. "They didn't think we could raise both of you. There were expectations, and when I fought back, they made sure I had no choice." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "So you let them erase me?" She flinched. "I tried to find you," she whispered, "for years. But by the time I got close, it was too late, and they made me swear to never tell you." My throat tightened. I wanted to be angry, to scream at her, to tell her that none of this was okay, but the look in her eyes told me she had suffered just as much. She had lost a child, and now, after all these years, he had found his way back. Ethan turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Where do we go from here?" I didn't have an answer. The past was shattered, but the future was still unwritten. I took a deep breath, looking between them. My mother, broken by secrets, and my brother, stolen from a life he never got to live. "I don't know," I admitted, "but we start with the truth." For the first time, Ethan nodded, and as the night stretched around us, something shifted. The past couldn't be changed, but maybe, just maybe, we could finally begin to rebuild.